Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Aeon Byte, AB Live, and yes, the Virtual Alexandria Academy is open, as so are many other Dreams of Sophia. My name is Miguel Connor, and I am still your Pompatus of Gnosis. And we've got a hunka burning Gnosis tonight with a great show. Welcome, everybody. I see you guys already flocking into the chat room. There's already people with questions before the interview started, and I'm sure we're going to get some great answers because with us today is, I was talking to her before the show, her daily videos, whether they're on Instagram or YouTube, are like my vitamins, if you would. It's like I take them and I feel spiritually strong to get through the day. I think there was another one, Corey Muscara, who was like, I need his stuff too. But this is the kind of stuff that I really love. So it is an honor to have Sarah Elkhaldy at the Virtual Alexandria and Aeon Byte. Sarah, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much.
Great to have you. And with us too, we have the Moondog Vance. Vance, how are you doing?
I am fine. I am fine.
Well, yeah, it sounds such energy, Vance. The edibles are kicking in.
It's called work.
Yeah, it is work. The daily
Staring at wiggly lines all day.
Well,
Spinning
here you
satellites out of control.
Well,
Literally,
here you
it says
are. Here you are for the other nice dose. Well, awesome. Well, not a lot of house what do you call it, housekeeping today. As always, if you have a question for Sarah, please do a super chat or write it in all caps, all question marks. That way Vance can notice you over there in the chat, and then we can provide it to Sarah. And yeah, a lot of great shows. I just realized that tomorrow is Groundhog Day. And I was thinking, I was trying to explain to my 9-year-old son the theme of reoccurrence, how we've had this conversation countless times. And he's like, well, why are you telling me again? I'm like, okay, yes, make it. What do you think, Sarah? What do you think about the Nietzschean theme of eternal reoccurrence? Do you buy that?
You know, it's funny because I was on some trip about like 6 years ago, and the guy who owned the house in Big Bear gave me this book, and I didn't even want it, and I didn't ask for it. And I forget what it was about, but he wanted to make it a movie. He was like a producer or something. And it was about that. And I really wish I recalled the name because I think you might like it was a popular novel in sci-fi. But yeah, so I found that really interesting because this is the first time I thought about that in 6 years. So there's something there for me. I need to go revisit, look for that book. But yeah, so the theme of reoccurrence, absolutely. I mean, I am a big believer of the generosity of of our higher aspects, the expanded version of ourself, being able to provide to us whatever we need in what one could say a reoccurring way in order for us to be able to elevate or integrate the lesson, so to speak. And until that is, thoroughly, fully communed with and integrated at a deep level, then yes, I do believe heavily in the theme of reoccurrence and, groundhog activity.
Yeah, well, that's it. Until we learn our lesson. Yeah. Groundhog Day is a movie. I think recently there's a show on Netflix called Russian Doll, which plays with that theme. If you check that out, it's pretty good. And also, it cracks me up because I forget it. You were in an interview as one of your YouTube channels. You were talking about describing your work or your beliefs. And you came up with a movie which I haven't watched in years, which I used to quote a lot, and that's Ryan Reynolds' The Nines.
Dude,
And
that movie tripped me out. That came at a specific time, though, where I felt like it was created. They didn't even know they were creating it for that reason, but I felt like it was created to specifically trigger in me that deeper level that had already come into fruition through that first experience. But that was what bumped it, later on into like, oh, okay, I'm in a different state of consciousness. I'm not in as deep of a trance state or altered state of consciousness. I'm in a semi-altered state. And that's what really gave it that lift or that boost to be like, okay, I understand. I understand the message. I felt like that. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people think that a movie is made specifically to convey a message to them, but never have I ever experienced a movie before where that felt like such a direct message for me.
Yeah, same here. And again, it puts it it's a simple way. And sometimes it's easier. You can sit there and talk all these philosophical mystic themes, but when you show them a piece of art or fiction, people go, "Ah, that's what Sarah's talking about." So,
Exactly.
yeah, great film, and certainly has its Gnostic themes and has so many themes. What about you, Vince? You've seen the Nines, and what do you think of
Oh
Eternal
yeah, a
Recurrence?
couple of times. Yeah, Philip K. Dick had a book called Now Wait for Last Year, which I think has something to do with that.
He was a
It's been a
Gnostic.
while since I read it.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, he said he was reluctantly admitted it, he said, in his exegesis, but he was.
He
He had
talks
his own
about
thing.
reoccurring themes.
Oh yeah. More than one of his books.
Yeah, he played with a lot of themes, but his mystical experience were very Gnostic towards the end of his life. So
Yeah, well, archetypes, cycles, that's all mixed up together. And what is an archetype? It's something that, a particular configuration that recurs through time.
Yeah. I remember him writing something saying that a personal revelation of his revealed that from the crucifixion and on, we have been in a repeating time loop.
Yes, from Roman times, right. The empire never ended.
Yeah.
Yeah, great messages by Dick. So Sarah, maybe share with the audience who might not know, how did you turn into these esoteric paths? You weren't like Ryan Reynolds, trapped, arrested in house arrest or something, right? And Melissa McCarthy had to like wake you up. It was not that.
No, my path was always sending me that, in different ways. Actually, you guys might appreciate this. This is probably why I had this thought today. So earlier in my spirituality, or my, exploration, I've always been inquisitive, burning desire, inquisitiveness, because of how much existential angst I came into this life with. So when people were thinking about like, oh, a sandbox, I was like, oh my God, if the Dalmatian toy is in the sand and then it goes all the way in and it can't breathe, like what happens to infinity? So I never had a filter on as a child of like mind, I guess you could call it. And so to draw kind of like a coherency out of like, where do I begin? I started dabbling into spirituality simultaneously when I was waking up into conspiracy documentaries. I don't even like calling it that term, but like that type of genre. And so I started off on that end of the spectrum, not really in the spiritual mentality at all, but then just kind of like unfolded into that. And then I started once again having like Dalmatian trapped in the sandbox thoughts, only this time about like alien invasions. So I'd be like an example, I'd be at a party, right? You're supposed to just talk and drink and whatnot at a party. And I remember so vividly, I got this flash of information that came almost in a packet. It just came in like quick flashes of a montage. And I went, oh. And then like I looked weird saying that. So I had to explain to my friend why I said that. And I told her, I just had an extremely vivid flash of an alien invasion that is taking that on Earth, where like aliens come. And I did not have a negative reference point for them at this point in my life. I want to say I believed in them, obviously. I mean, duh, but it was on the positive side, if ever, to neutral to super positive end. And so it was not in my realm yet to have this flash of humans, sorry for the graphicness, humans having chains around their necks and in a line, because aliens. And so that was pretty disturbing, especially, like I said, my context wasn't there, even though I was excavating and inquiring and things of that nature. And those flashes didn't come all the time, but they came enough for me to start going down that yellow brick road, for me to start pointing what, out of all the areas to focus on, because there's so many different areas to go into. That led me for a while out of like the esoteric realm, which, the deeper teachings of religion, but more into the fringe realm. And as you guys know very well, they coincide, they overlap. Yeah. But that got me more into the celestial, stellar realm of it. Whereas before, I understood these things strictly from, more of still relating to it and internally communing with it, but from a psyche perspective, not a fringe perspective.
No, that makes sense. And when clients come to you or people reach out to you, and for example, you've shared some of experience. I've had experience, obviously, Philip K. Dick and others are natural born mystics. Their one foot is in the other realm, but they go, well, Sarah, I've never had a mystical experience. Am I worth it? Or what can you do for me? What do you tell them?
Well, for the energy healing work that I do, it pretty much meets the client wherever they're at. To be honest, I am very impressed with the caliber of the clients that come to me. So they have had mystical experiences already for the most part. If they haven't, it's completely fine. But they definitely are needing a mirror of how conscious they are. That's one of the things I try to provide the most, is people don't have a proper mirror of just how conscious they are because they don't have a support system. But how I usually help with that is the higher self will choose certain frequencies during the healing section of the healing to specifically activate whatever needs to be activated in a client's energy field. From there, I always say we do our part and then it collapses and it's the quantum's part. So I can't predict the quantum, but also it's that energy of allowance and surrender that is the strongest part of co-creation. You don't want an energy healer or a sage or any type of person you're coming to for assistance in this way, at least from an energetic viewpoint, to be super involved in your process, because then they have a subconscious motivation, expectation. They're coming from some sort of wound. And then that all of that seeps into the work. It muddles it. It taints it.
No, that makes perfect sense. And yeah, I think the miracle, well, people come to you when we come because we want help. And that's the healing. To me, sometimes that's the miracle, and everything will take care of itself if you have trust. And do you think that we are all natural born healers, or what do you think? Like, for example, I've talked experiences with my uncle. He's the head of the Santo Daime Church. We do ayahuasca, and he can just put his hands 2 feet away, and you can feel like your body flooded with this energy that's so beautiful. But of course, healing can be, as I say, well, healing, if we believe in what we believe, then healing doesn't have to be local. It can be non-local. We can heal across the globe. But do you think we're all healers, or what's your take on that?
I definitely feel like people have, I feel like we have it all of us, but then coming into a life, we choose beforehand to activate certain things. And then those, let's call it biases or distortions rather, are what build up our personal identity and the personal intentions for that lifetime. So on one hand, yeah, we're all healers. But on another hand, there are, a lot of us, not even like a little select few, a lot of us that came in, activated more of that healer type of archetype. For me, it's a wounded healer, but yeah, any one of those type of archetypes where they're on a healing path. And then I would say that on top of that, if a person is just aimed toward higher consciousness in general, they're a healer, whether they're directly down that path or not, they're a healer.
Yeah, many ways to heal. And what's your take on the situation today? Since these are strange times, if you to say the least. Do you think our society is eroding to nothing? Do you think perhaps we are going through an awakening? What's your take on these very interesting, well, like I like to say, this Philip K. Dick world?
Yeah, that's actually a very accurate piece. Um, I think it's both. And I think that's what we're seeing. We're seeing schizophrenia playing out at the extreme, right? Before, in different ages, there were different themes, different energies going on. So yeah, people were into the concept of ascension in whatever terminology they considered that and whatnot. But it wasn't even mysticism. Mysticism always was inextricably linked with some sort of salvic um ascent of the soul, some sort, or that in one way or another still falls under the category of healing. But that doesn't mean that that was the theme, the spirit of that age still. And so we're in the spirit of this age is one of very massive discernment, which Gnosticism, conveys. I believe Gnosis to be synonymous with discernment. So one of discernment, because of that extremity that we're seeing. So we're having a few different polarizations happening. We could say the first layer, shall we say, will be on the third dimensional layer. So the third dimensional layer shows up in the third dimensional world. That's through media, that's through politics, that's through the world stage, the theatrics, shall we say. So we have that polarization going on first. But then, like let's say at a hyper dimensional level, we have a polarization happening between that whole lower third dimensional world that's going on versus those who in this cycle they're in a stage of developmental soul that is able to progress. And this isn't a superiority. This has nothing to do with that, because a truly mature soul knows that in the larger scope of things, there are only lessons, and that a master is continuously growing themselves and evolving. So it's not, once we introduce a certain type of hierarchy to it, I'm sure you guys might have run into certain types of sound bites or cool catchphrases going on lately about chosen ones.
Oh, yeah.
So there's this certain type of mentality that if you track where it's rooted from, then it's not as a mature, developed place than just knowing that the soul is in different stages of development. In Gnosticism, the 3 stages of development. It's in different stages of development, and that unfortunately, against my own personal will and my best wishes, the ascent, shall we call it, is not going to be able to be embodied for all souls, because they're not at the same stage of development.
That makes sense. And something we probably agree with is I like to say these days, or it's been a few years, I also, besides the Philip K. Dick, I called it this age of Hermes. I feel we are truly, whatever you want to call it, the archetype, energy, force, god of the trickster has really taken over. And this force is our salvation, but as always, it's our doom. There's no choice. You either lean into the trickster or you go mad. But you did a great video on the trickster. Do you agree with what I'm saying? Or let me tell us your views on the tricksters.
Yeah, really, really early in my journey, because now I would never get a reading, but early in my journey, I allowed one of my friends who's psychic to give me a reading. She gave me this reading, spot on, except one thing. I didn't know what the trickster archetype was. This was like a decade and some change ago. So I'm like, well, what's the trickster? And she was just receiving information. So I'm not really even sure she knew what the trickster was. That's just what when I was given the archetype. So then I went on a quest to go find out what the trickster archetype was. And I ended up running into a Mason who was teaching tarot at some sort of spiritual place. And I got a full workshop on the trickster from a Mason, and the take on it on the tarot. And what I love about the archetype that I came in with is that it has such a broad bandwidth. And one of the biggest challenges in my personal life has been bringing all of my bandwidth through the door, bringing it all through the door, because I always have my intent in my head is I want all of me to go through the door. And I know that that's a lot, and I'm going to lose people on the way, and that's fine. But when I do it, I hope I do it mature and gracefully, and not because I'm being the immature self-saboteur of the trickster, right? Because I'm aware of its detriment. But it's a large bandwidth to fit through the door. So it's heavy. And that's probably goes back to the Dalmatian in the sandbox going all the way to infinity. It's like a trickster energy type would be that large of a bandwidth and run that much different energies within them and just try to synthesize it. So I have, to answer your question more directly, I have a very fond reverence and affinity for the trickster.
Yeah, same here. So, like in the nines, the trickster, Ryan Reynolds, he's trapped in these different manifestations of his life. And those that are trying to wake him up are, you might say, they're the tricksters. He's got his life. He doesn't want to be bothered when he's like a parent, he's a father, he's got a daughter, but these tricksters are trying to tell him, no, 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 your reality is false. You are false. I mean, that's part of the trickster, right?
Absolutely. The serpent in Gnosticism is the trickster, right. and in the positive way, in my own personal beliefs. Yeah. It's the one. It has I agree with Jung. I just feel like he brought it way too down to earth. So I agree, if we're looking at it from a humanistic perspective, a third dimensional perspective, yes, absolutely. It can be the wounded intuition. It could be the stunted aspect of the psyche that ends up self-sabotaging because it doesn't know how to relate from an intimate and integrative way. Absolutely. But when we take that up a notch and we start putting hyperdimensionality overlaid on top of it, the trickster archetype, I mean, is even linked to Dionysus, which was one of Jesus's prototypes. Like it's innately, when you bring the fire, you must endure the heat, right? You are innately going to be called by some an angel, and to that same degree, you will be seen as the devil, because we're in a world of duality. That's the trickster. So anyone really who's a mover and shaker is what I call them. I call people movers and shakers who care about the world. Anyone who cares about the world and is doing something, whether it's, just organizing people to help out in a community way, or doing grid work, or anything to build a new earth, I call them a mover and shaker. And at some degree, when you're putting yourself out there on the line, how you look to some is going to be so distorted that regardless of whether you even want to be the trickster archetype or not, when you're in a light delivering the truth and you're enduring the fire, you will be considered a trickster, but you will be read as one. Does that make sense?
No, it makes sense. And I love how you talk about the archons are the tricksters, but as you just said, in the Gnostic gospel, Sophia and Jesus are the tricksters because they come from this other realm and they're sneaking around the archons and the demiurge and turning into serpents to tell Adam and Eve, wake up, get out of here. So you have this like battle of the tricksters, or this Game of Thrones of the tricksters. But at the same time, you say the trickster also, one of his gifts or her gifts is that we no longer see things in black and white, right?
Exactly, because that's deliverance. To me, nuance is deliverance. That's the gnosis I have received. Is that nuance is an aspect of discernment. Discernment is if you were to break it up into a trinity, it would be gnosis, discernment, and nuance. And so nuance to me is deliverance, because what I love, my core resonance with Gnosticism now is the internal salvation. Salvation through Gnosis, literally, through knowledge, versus an external faith, and a very blind one at that. So because I have that core resonance with Gnosticism, there is definitely this a lot of respect and reverence for being able to see that through the nuance of all of reality, what is a poison in one case might be a medicine in another. What is, completely a rotten teaching just might be it came to you at the wrong part of your journey. It wasn't exactly the teaching you needed where you're at. It could be harmful. That could be someone else's last puzzle piece they needed to integrate everything. Everything is about nuance. A lot of times what I teach, or even just other things I see being taught throughout the ages, are not understood because the person didn't even refine their nuance yet to be able to understand the teaching. So then when that happens, what we're kind of left with, like I say kind of because sometimes it's innocent, it's not so like intentional. Sometimes we're left with that scarecrow fallacy. The scarecrow, it's the one that
Never heard of
politics
it.
uses the most. Oh, I'm sorry. Straw man.
Oh, the strawman, yes, of course.
Yeah, scarecrow, straw man.
They are made of strawman.
Yeah, so so politics uses that one all the time, right?
Yeah.
Because they're teaching us, we're modeling, we're patterning how to be low consciousness by seeing people say something and then another person go and say, you said this, and then define it for them in a really out of context, lower frequency way. And that's what happens a lot, even on accident, sometimes on purpose with teachings. It'll be like, you meant that. So that means this. And then it goes lower and lower and lower and lower from there. But nuance kind of gives teachings the benefit of the doubt. And even here's the cool thing about nuance. Even if a transmitter of knowledge, whoever that may be, is not giving a transmission that's either profound or even what that person might need, if you have nuance, you might hear something super profound, even if the person didn't mean it, because the person was able to grasp something that wasn't even said and use it, harness that towards their own discernment.
And it's interesting what you're saying, Sarah, because obviously these people are a lot of the time, they're not cultivating any sort of nuance. They have no Sophia, no trickster, but they're certainly projecting their shadow. And what I like about your videos is that you don't, how do I say it? You don't have kids' gloves on. You're pretty like, this is not easy. This is hard. I'm calling the shit out. And a lot of it is shadow work. How can people maybe explain how can people work on their shadow, or what does shadow work entail in when you work with people?
Yeah, so shadow work is the process. It's the great work.
I think you said
And
it's one of the most important things to awakening, right?
yes, shadow
It's
work is so important. So what it is the shadow is unconscious. We're also unconscious of a lot of positive things.
Mhm.
As a matter of fact, I would even say that conscious individuals, yes, they have shadow that needs to be integrative, where they could be vindictive, predator, perpetrator, end of the spectrum stuff going on still. But a conscious individual has more so a lot of their light that's hidden in their shadow to actually bring forward and integrate, which is I call it a beautiful problem. People that are responsible enough to try to be conscious, or if not, consider themselves conscious and are working more towards that end, have beautiful problems. And so the shadow in that end of the spectrum would be like inner child work would be perfect, where they're being able to even acknowledge or honor their light because they never had a mirror of that before. They never had, even if they did have that, the most innocent aspect of the shadow is something we simply don't know how to embody. And so a lot of the times what we're getting in law of attraction is we're not getting an exact reflection. That's like a huge misconception about the law of attraction. A lot of times, especially this is important for conscious individuals, we're getting like a negative, like in photography, we're getting like what we don't embody but need to. So we might attract people who, or situations where they're bringing out what we actually need from them. So, oh, I can't stand that person. They go around and they just take so many pictures of themselves and then post it, and they took that quote from somebody else. And so nobody is saying to like that. But if we're attracting certain individuals in our experience that are representing something that we just can't stand and that we can't see ourselves in, it's probably because we're not that. But what we're getting a picture of, what we're getting a reflection of, is the medicine we need, because what it's really pointing to isn't you're a narcissistic individual. What it's really pointing to is, hey, you see that part of your inner child that doesn't feel acknowledged and really wants to shine, but you're judging the heck out of it to the point where you've locked that energy into place and now it has no vibrational movement in it. So it's basically paralyzed will. For all intents and purposes, it's dead will. Yeah, in order to ascend, you're going to need that. So shadow work at that point becomes actually just really being able to super be honest with ourselves about our own needs, even if we're not in touch with them fully. And so, and life will help. Life will help, depending on how on board we are or not with our own growth and our own spiritual evolution. Life will, come in and say, "Hey, you needed that help right there. I can help." That's at least what happened with my own journey. That's why I'm very acutely aware of how life will help when we need it. But yeah, so for shadow work, it's super important to also be able to acknowledge the fact that we contain the whole spectrum within us. Okay, it serves nothing in my evolution if I do not admit if I have the quality of vindictiveness. But it costs everything if I, still using me as an example, were to not want to look at if I have the quality of vindictiveness. Only I really, at the end of the day, will suffer from my inability or lack of ability to meet myself completely where I am. So shadow work is also, in that sense, being super humble, because we're constantly humbling ourselves into an honest space with all of our aspects.
Yeah, and having a dialogue with them, because as I tell people, the shadow wants a seat at the table. Just got to make sure it's King Arthur's round table and you listen to it. That's all it wants. It's like, I want to listen. I am Miguel's dark side or whatever. I want to listen, and then we will work together.
Yeah, and the dark side can be super powerful and even serve the light.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A part of my work is also showing that, like I'm a spicy meatball. If I wasn't a spicy meatball, then like it serves me somehow, right? Like we have to be honest and real about our nature, and then from there we exalt it, but not by suppressing it. We exalt it by going, how is this nature serving the all? So it would do me no justice, my path, if I tried to replicate someone else's path. So for me, I look at even what I call spicy. I call that like, then that's my medicine for the world. Then that's my specific medicine. I'm not here to bring another person's medicine. I'm not here to go, I'm not, whatever my audience is, it's mine. That's what's better than yours, instead of pretending or emulating something that you're not. And then, getting whatever. So because of that, it's also about really being honest about wherever our darkness is, but also, is it serving a super benevolent purpose at the end of the day?
Oh, it is. It is. And well, speaking of spicy meatballs, a cuccara pasta vance, Sachi. Any questions from you or the audience?
Well, we definitely have got questions out there, and let's see.
One, and I'll be right
Dan-
back. I've got two little tricksters I got to let out, the cats.
Okay. Don't let them trick you too badly. Okay, Daniel W. wanted to know from you, Sarah. He'd love to have your thoughts on reconciling our spiritual nature and ascension journey with the enjoyment of material success.
To me, I see them as a part of one another, because if we look at also ascension, which I talk about a lot in all the different facets of it, as fulfillment. So to bring this a little bit back to Gnosticism before I answer it first, what I really drive about some of the branches of Gnosticism is the fact that it's through the liberation of the soul and joy are inextricably linked in some of those teachings. And so we can be in this world and not of it, but still have material success, because this poverty consciousness that humanity is waking up out of is also one where it's this dichotomy. I have to appear a certain way in order to really feel spiritual, or I have to, some sort of false light programming around martyrdom. It's not that martyrdom doesn't have an exalted role. Of course it does. But martyrdom is strongly used as a false light program on humanity, and specifically people who are conscious and waking up. So it's funny how the people who would do the best with having the most responsible, like it's not like, oh my God, I have money. Now I'm going to be this unconscious person. No, money only enhances who you already are. So sometimes I think about winning the lottery and I kind of get overwhelmed, and I know what's blocking me, because I buy the ticket sometimes, but then I don't even check it. And the reason why, when I tuned into that, is because sometimes it would just create so much of a life path for me, because I would use it for what I'm doing, but now I'd feel I'd have to do it at a larger level. So to answer his question, it doesn't make you low vibes. It doesn't turn you into the ego. Does it have that potential? Yes. But what's happening with conscious people is we have to embrace that aspect of what's happening, because one, it's linked with fulfillment in some way. If you have gifts to share in whatever capacity, and you're so aligned with it, and it's doing well in the material world, then to me that doesn't signify at all that there's some sort of spiritual deficiency. That can signify that a person is so in alignment with their dharma that they're seeing a physical representation, a physical manifestation of that. And so one, that, and then two, as I said, the poverty consciousness that spiritual people have been stuck in. And then funny, the layman, who typically only cares about money, would be like, let's call that, for lack of a better term, or more compassionately, like the egoic state of mind. The egoic state of mind, it'll put you to sleep. It'll put you deeper to sleep. But if you're awakening and you have some sort of material abundance going on, then what that can be used to do is actually, through a feedback loop, help bring more fulfillment. And I don't mean an ego fulfillment. I mean like a fulfillment of somebody's dharma, or a fulfillment of what somebody's needed to heal in past lives, some sort of things that are used because they're done in a conscious and responsible way.
Very good. Curly Vagan just came up with a super chat, which we always pick first. And he wants to say, hi, Sarah. How do you find your purpose?
You find your purpose by, one, seeing where you get life force from. It's not because life force is your purpose. Life force is the little carrot on the donkey that you follow to your purpose. So you try to find whatever gives you life force. The reason why I say that is because a lot of people on a spiritual path come across a lot of blocked will. The ego self has deflated, but their higher self hasn't fully inflated within their being yet. So they're in this like in between realm. And so they have a lot of paralyzed will because of that, because the old has faded, but the new hasn't been nourished enough yet. So that nourishingness will be life force. So I'll give you a really I'll just give you a basic example. Let's say it brings me life force to be curious about essential oils. Essential oils might not be my purpose, But if that's giving me life force at that time and nothing else in my environment or my immediate reality is giving me life force, then I might become really curious about essential oils. And so I might buy a book on that or start looking them up and stuff like that. And then from there, that might expand. And that might go to, and that might open a door to something that we didn't even know about beforehand, kind of like flower essences. And then we expand more. And so that's why I say life force. It's because that is the thing that's pointing to purpose. There's a second part to this, and it's more direct. I gave you that roundabout one. The direct thing is how you find your purpose is everyone's purpose is to be themselves. Because when you're yourself, you're going to go, okay, what would myself do? And so everybody needs to be themselves, not only because that's healing, but also because whatever we do to be ourselves is what we're calling by the name purpose. So purpose can really just be worded a different way. Instead of saying purpose, it's you're here to express your truth and who you are. That could be through making bracelets. This is how I express who I am. I'm making bracelets. This can whatever. But people they're putting a huge restriction on that valve, that channel to their higher self when they're going like, okay, I need to find my purpose, because the higher self never said coming into this life, your purpose was to go make an organic brand of essential oils that were from this region of the world specifically. That is too detailed. The higher self said, you come in to be yourself. Go. And then the free will comes in and says, okay, what does that mean? Okay, let's go. At one point, I was getting life force from poetry. I still consider myself a spoken word poet. I'm still combining a third collection. But as you can see from there, that's not what I'm known for. But at one point, that was my life force, and I thought that was my purpose. So I'm really just trying to stress the fact that whatever we do at whatever time, sure, that's a part of our purpose. But really, at that time, what I was doing was saying, this is Sarah's art. So I was just being myself. I was sharing myself with the world through that medium. And then that expanded me. So I really want people to hone in when they're thinking of purpose from the perspective of sharing yourself with the world. What would that look like if you were only ever received from the world doing that?
Well said, yes. And for the audience, our poetry is really good. I read this poem, "Meet Me at Earth. I want to see what you look like," and it was a beautiful poem, beautiful poem.
Thank you.
And bringing back Jung, he did say once about finding yourself. He said, well, think about when you were a child and what made the hours seem like minutes. If you can hone on that, what were you doing? Building, dressing up dolls, drawing, skipping in the rain. You just follow that and you'll find your purpose. So
Yeah, I was going to say that because I have very clear memories, like when I was 3 years old, playing with lights and switches and taking things apart. That's what I
there you go.
loved. And what do I do for a living? Basically that.
Oh
Like,
yeah. And now you got Cosmos behind you, so you're winning.
Yeah. It's worked out well.
yeah.
You want to take more questions, Miguel? We got
Yeah,
a
no,
lot
yeah,
of them.
it looks like people need Sarah's answers. So fine. I mean, I talked to her about archons, Philip, K. Dick, and tricksters. My life is good. So and also, well, today too, as I've said, I have a witch who does these psychic cleansings on me. Her name is Ava. So I am on top of the world. But
Oh,
others
cool.
might need your help.
Okay, well, I by the way, for the audience, I pick questions according to how well they match what we're talking about, or how, in this case, how much what Sarah's talking about tonight. So here's one that's definitely very close. How does a near-death experience affect or relate to shadow work?
Oh, yeah. So the cool thing is you could have near-death experiences without passing out. I don't know if people are aware of that, or without having near death. But anyways, so a near-death experience, how that relates to shadow work is it puts a person on a new trajectory. That's the whole point of them. Okay, so maybe my audience might be familiar with my video on timelines. So timelines shift all of the time, but unfortunately, because of the ego, and I don't mean it in a negative way, just the habitualness. So the ego is just the habitualness of the self. Because of that, it's not always likely that we shift timelines. So our trajectories look very solid and they look very cemented, and they're not. NDEs are there when a person, no judgment, when a person has gone too far away from optimal or too far away from their life intention, and the NDEs come in to completely shake up that cementedness of their timelines. Because when you get the cementedness, the solidity of your timeline shaken, then new probabilities occur. So it's kind of like coming in, shaking up the thing, hoping for the best with the reset. So how that relates to shadow work is the trajectories that now come online are ones that typically make a person go into a deeper state of mysticism, because they're having a mystical experience. So that puts them on new trajectories, and shadow work all of a sudden enters the scene, becomes more of an important theme, because now we're faced with our mortality. What is a deeper theme embedded in the psyche, aka the shadow or the unconscious, than our mortality?
Fear of death.
Very
Yeah.
good.
Or do a lot of ayahuasca like I do.
Yeah.
And I like, the older I get, the more hippie I'm becoming. I don't know what happened. So,
I heard a quote from Terence McKenna. He said something like, all esotericism is like practice of death or study of death. And I'm laughing because that is so true. Like when I came into this, it was like, yeah, this is a bit like how do we die? And so like sometimes lifetimes are about your death.
well, that's what Socrates said. All philosophy is just preparing
Right.
for death. The
Philosophy.
Buddhists say the same thing. All meditation is just getting yourself ready for the illusion that is death, because that's what it ultimately is. And it's hard because I always think, well, fear is me holding on to life. All my fears, I want to hold on to this and that and all that stuff. I remember one time being so fearful of death. I was so into my ego. I was afraid of falling asleep, because I'd be like, well, when I fall asleep, I change. What happens to that person who falls asleep? And then I'm Miguel. And that's how much control I wanted over things. And I got really depressed, and so needless to say, I'm much better now, like Monty Python and the Holy Grail. I'm feeling much better. Yeah.
You got so tired.
yeah, but I was terrified just because I did not want to let go of my egoic world, because when you sleep, the ego is no longer in control and you're in a completely parallel dimension, different rules, different worlds.
That's a good segue into Mr. Rison's question, who said shadow work is very important. It gets pretty tough. Any advice to cope with depression and stuff?
Yeah, this is kind of why one of the reasons I started doing in-person events is it's people need a support system now. There's only so much that can be reconciled in isolation. A lot can, right? The hermit phase is glorified a part of the journey. But a lot of the times it's that human connection through shadow work that's needed as well. And that's where online communities shine. Because if we don't have a physical community, then the online community is what we gather resources, we gather strength from. But that's at least when I'm tuning into the listener who asked that question. It's the support system is really important to be able to, and if you don't have one and you can't find some sort of forum or online community to be able to bounce that off of, but the depression is linked with the lack of being understood and connection that comes with it. And so, actually that's part of where my poetry was birthed from. There's art to be made in those stages if you could find it, and that's also shadow work. That's alchemy, is being able to find a avenue, a creative outlet that you feel will be able to express your shadow in. So expression is also really important for the shadow.
And what about what I tell people? And again, they're showing again. I'm turning into a big old hippie. Going out in nature to me is help because I live in a very remote area, so it's hard to meet with like-minded people and share. There's AA meetings and a few things I can find people, but going out and spending hours in nature, it's like a different relationship with the animals and the spirits. They become your tribe. I know it sounds strange, but they're your people. And for better or worse, for the negative and positive nature, you really become very happy in there.
Yeah, you could actually go. This is something I do. I go. The people who see me think like they run. Like you put your hands on a tree, and then you ask that when you're breathing in the tree and the air from the tree, that all of the positive or microorganisms come in and help your flora, but for optimal. Be
I
specific.
like that.
Like, so it could, because the breath in forests or the breath by trees are really rich in positive elements for our gut flora.
Wow, I love that. Yeah, I know there's a saying right now on the internet when somebody's acting a complete fool, they'll go touch grass. And I'm like, this is wisdom because as a friend told me, going barefoot during the summer is for an hour is like having 10 therapy sessions. You know what I mean? It really does heal you and everything.
Yeah.
So
At this point, it's just go outside.
yeah, go outside, touch grass, just go. Get away from life happens away from your screen and your family and your job. It happens in those wordless places, if you would.
Well, you want another one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another question? Okay, let's see what we got left here. How about poor Brinta, who actually was so enthused that looks like a she from her picture, or somebody with long hair. I'll pick her second one. Hope you answer this one. Could you speak about controlled opposition, please?
Heck yeah.
Good.
That's my expertise.
Ooh, okay. She know you.
Knock it out of the park.
Controlled opposition is what this entire realm has turned into. I want you to imagine an arena. And every door that you come into the arena from and you leave the arena from is you're all going into, just from different doors, different entrances, you're going into the same place. In Gnosticism, we could call it, you're going into the demiurge. It's like, are you coming in through this religion? Oh, I'm this religion. Oh, I'm this political. I'm this whatever. It's like they'll create whatever you want. It's yours, baby. Like whatever program you got. So the thing about controlled opposition, it doesn't just stop with blue or red. Controlled opposition is when you control the opposing side of everything, so that you have an oligarchy, I believe.
Yeah.
Or a monopoly on everything. Because whether they consider themselves blue, you're in control of that. Now, who's the opposite of blue? Red. Okay, we're in control of that. Okay, now let's go to religions. Okay, we're in control of that. So whatever way you enter the arena into, it's like you might think you're opposing something, but those people that you're opposing and those belief systems that you're opposing are on the polar end of the spectrum. So the opposition is controlled. In its most direct way, controlled opposition means that the opposition of whatever this paradigm is, whether it's a political paradigm, a religious paradigm, even a spiritual paradigm, whatever paradigm is, they're all going and being siphoned into the same entity or source. And that's controlled opposition.
Life is a cosmic casino. Everybody's sitting at the blackjack table, but the house always wins.
And
Always
that's why nuance is deliverance. Because if a person is spiritually sovereign, see the oxymoron and yet the paradox of what I teach is something that cannot be taught. I teach spiritual sovereignty. That is where I get energy to teach. So I'm a teacher of spiritual sovereignty. And yet, if you look at the oxymoron of that, how can you teach spiritual sovereignty? Wouldn't a person need to be sovereign? Well, I'm the tricycle wheels. I'm tricycle wheeling until the person goes, wait, I think I get it. I'm riding my bike. And then the tricycle wheels fall off. And then you can disagree or you can agree, but you're coming from a clear space. You're not coming from like an infantile, I don't agree with you. I'm opposing you because I have ego wounds and I won't look at myself. You're coming from an actual sovereign space, and a sovereign can go, okay, I recognize nuance. Okay, I recognize, oh, that path is lacking discernment, this or whatever and stuff, so that you transcend the level of the arena of controlled opposition. Everything before you are sovereign is just controlled opposition. Put it that way.
Yeah, there's a Star Trek episode, The Gangsters of Triskelion. Is that the one where they were fighting in the arena and the brains were controlling it outside, but Kirk got to him. He transcended, as he always does.
Did Philip Dick write that?
Yeah, could have. Probably one of the good science fiction writers. Who knows? In fact, I think you just answered another question that Contemplating with a Master asked, which is, did you have any thoughts on exposing cult mentality? And that's the shadow side, right? The shadow side of the guru, right? Cults.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, the funny thing is that I work with cult survivors on a monthly basis. So, and the even funnier thing is that technically I came from cults because that's what mystery schools are. So, and this isn't directly, this isn't directed at the questioner, but I think people are being little babies when it comes to cults, because if you can leave anytime you want to, that's not a cult, honey. I've been with cult survivors. I have been in cults, and guess what? I have a great career now. And I look back and I go, you know what? Those people were pretty culty. And I just walked away because, I needed to get some clearings done because obviously there was some heavy negative alien energies involved with those forums. But at the end of the day, you could learn a lot from cults with discernment. So, and part of that is actually also us recognizing, hey, this is a hive mind mentality. Okay, this doesn't actually lead to spiritual sovereignty, even though, because, the New Age is filled with these, I know people from the 70s who've been in both spiritual cults and then people who had to plan out 1 year before they left an actual cult. And the crazy part about it is that this was a cult that really liked when people had regular successful jobs. So you would have never known because they're free. They go out into the world. They have a successful job. They have coworkers that would have never known that they're a part of this crazy cult. They come back to the commune and it was crazy. So I've worked with several people, and I would say continuously on a monthly basis, who were in actual cults. And then even just from my personal experience in them, there's a lot to be gained from the ones I was in, not like real ones where you're stuck and they tell you who to marry and then you have to plan your escape. But also what I've seen in the spiritual community, I'm covering all of the bases here, all of the ranges. I've also seen this cry wolf mentality where it's I came from mysticism. Everything's a cult. What the heck? What do we do about a group of people who agree and you can leave anytime? I don't know what to do at that point. I think you should just leave anytime then. So I hope that covered the whole range of it. But also a fun fact, Pluto is in Aquarius now for a really long time. And that is all about cults. So what we're going to see in our outer reality as a collective is people going into nicher groups that can be considered cultish because Pluto in Aquarius is cult. So we're going to have a lot more cults, meaning people that go, you know what? I didn't like that group. They were too whatever. And so they go into like a smaller group and because everyone's like dispersing, kind of like sacred geometry.
Fractals. Fractal cults. Fractal cults.
Yeah, like that. Yeah. So, just be cautious. And when you think you're in one, make sure you're not on a commune, so you could leave anytime.
Yeah. Watch out for the big pictures of somebody's face or the statue or whatever. There's always usually a personality. That's a good
Watch out for
giveaway.
worship. Worship is from the false light.
Yeah.
But when you help people like that, are you helping them deprogram or heal? Because I'm sure the psychic heal must be really hard. Whether we're abused, we're still connected to our abuser. They were our lives, our family, everything. Whether somebody leaves the Catholic Church after time, that's a hard decision, or you leave the Republican or Democratic Party. I mean, it's painful. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I work mainly with the PTSD from the trauma, because by the time I'm working with them, they have long left. At least in my personal practice, that's been what shows up, is people who have long been out of the scenario and still trying to pick up the pieces of that experience and reintegrate the trauma that was done to them. So yeah, like it's pretty explicit, like I've had stories where people are like going into such a deep state of meditation, and if you're showing any type of emotion whatsoever, you're hit. And I'm like, okay, I'm sorry. I would not pay $11,000 to go get hit.
It's not, when I was a kid and I would take Kempo in Mexico, we would have to meditate, and my sensei used to beat the living crap out of us if we laughed or passed gas or did anything while we were 8 years old. And then it became a challenge. Then it was like, who can take the beating this time but it was a different era. I love that man. He was wonderful.
He loves
I don't think it was a cult. It was just karate.
Our bodies might be, if you look at the history of the evolution of our bodies and so forth, they might be walking cults, because maybe all the cells were free at one time and they started, hey, let's get together. Before you know it, no, you're not leaving this body. We have to be all one. And before you know it, it gets more and more organized. And then here we are, brains and bodies and lungs. And so the poor cells, they can't get away now. They're part of the cult of us.
You're so correct, because I've thought about that. I've thought about like all I need, like I agree with my brother a lot, just as an example. And then I'm like, oh my God, did we start a cult? Because we like agree all the time. And so like, if you like agree, if you get a group of people together in a room and they agree, that could even be considered a cult. So yeah, it's just really about making sure to understand why we're resonating. Are we resonating from a wound? Like, oh, I need to fit into this structure, so I will compromise my sovereignty or my personal critical thinking because I want to fit in with this group. And then taking personal ownership for that. But also when it comes to like the false guru aspect of it, in this age, it's pretty obvious. In past ages, I mean, like I said, there's some examples I just said where it's not that obvious. People are still in straight up cults, but the false guru archetype in the past, it was blatant. It was like the things that were done. I don't know if my audience is aware of where the cult history is in, but it's super sexual abuse, super crazy sexual things. Man, there's a good chapter about the shadow of the false guru in this one book. Name slips my mind, but anyways, but yeah, there was even a lot of like prominent Buddhist teachers had some sort of like shadow side going on when it came to like spreading STDs and stuff like that. So like, just don't have sex in a group of people you agree with. And if they all look like they're agreeing without using their critical thinking and their own self-sovereignty before they're resonating, then I would suggest that you leave and you find people who can honor more critical thinking.
Yeah, and if there are too many Rolls Royces on the way when you're walking up to the meeting house,
He's picking on Osho. He's picking on.
I just had a conversation last week where I was like, you know what? I agree with everything that man says, even when he flipped
brilliant.
it. Yeah, he flipped it. He would even say, like in the next thing, he was like, people who need me to always be the same. You're the problem, not me. And I even agree with that. I agree with him, but I think that he was super selfish because his message was compromised by that. So I know that he was trying to show his wealth and abundance, but I feel like he compromised his message, which was more important than a statement.
Yeah, agreed. We also went silent for years too, didn't he? He went silent.
Yeah, he went silent.
I think he was trying to prove a point. Like, I don't even need to talk, and you people are mesmerized by me. So that's some charisma.
Is that when he turned from Rajneesh to Osho?
Oh, yeah, that was when it fell apart. When he went back to Asia after that.
Okay.
You know, my projectors out there for the audience. If you're a projector from Human Design, all is well, because guess who was a projector? Osho. You are not in lack. That's what kept me going on my path. I'm a projector. And I just thought, man, I'm never recognized. I'm never recognized. And then I went, no, cut that belief system out, because Osho.
Well, you're definitely recognized. You've got big subscribers on YouTube and everything. So you're definitely hitting your stride. It's great. I had a quick question, since we're talking about cults and shadow, all that. When people ask you, what is evil, Sarah, what do you tell them? Is there ontological evil, or what's your take on iniquity, wickedness in high places, as Paul says?
Yes, there's a passive and a active form of evil, just like there's of everything. The passive form is ignorance. The active form is the oppositional tension that's required for evolution. The passive evil is the ones where we're complicit. Complicit from non-action is still action.
Mm-hmm.
Non-awakening is inadvertently evil, because with ignorance comes all the many different ways that evil gets to thrive. So if there is not a conscious direction, the will is not being activated and taking actions into consciousness, then the default settings of this universe are ones where we are still complicit, but now if we didn't take conscious action, we took unconscious actions, and unconscious actions are the breeding grounds. They're the perfect soil for explicit or active evil.
Yeah, I know the Gospel of Philip just says the mother of all sins is ignorance. That's where so much does, because obviously Gnosis is, as you said, it's awareness, as an understanding. You see things as they are. And but do you think there can be disembodied spirits who are seeking harm or such type of energies out there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's why shadow work isn't just for, okay, so like we're all a potluck. The collective shadow is the manifestation of all of our shadow that we individually contributed to the potluck. And so that's why when we're doing shadow work, we're not necessarily clearing other people's karma. That's a nuance that could get people in trouble, because they might start resonating with that type of savior complex. And then when they start resonating with that, they'll start being given in their energy field a bunch of other people's karma. You don't want that. So that's one of the false light things going on in the spiritual community, specifically the ascension community, which I love. But it's this like, we're here to clear everyone's karma. And as a no. We're here to broadcast healing, not clearing everyone's karma. We can't, that's a lesson in and of itself, and a harsh one, that other people's lessons can be absolved. But yeah, that's also probably because I resonate with Gnosticism, and it's through that individual liberation through knowledge and discernment. But yeah, I forgot what the question was. Did I answer?
Oh, we're
it?
just talking about evil spirits. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
evil.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So the disembodiment,
Evil.
the disincarnate, you could look at as existing on its own, in its own. So it's independent of our reality. But yet, since we're in a collective consensus reality, that's what this universe is. So since we're in a consensus reality, how we don't interact with it to the best of our degree is by being able to transmute our own consciousness, our own psyche, our own spirit. But yes, there is disembodied, and those are souls that, to varying degrees, the reason I say varying degrees is we could be talking hyperdimensional, or we could be talking like a ghost, a traveler. So disembodied in evil spirits to certain degrees of darkness, let's call it, are all operating under separation consciousness, lack. Both of those, separation consciousness, they don't understand unity consciousness, but also lack. So when you get, so look at lack metaphysically as starving. And those are the actions that are taken that we call evil. It's starvation. The channel is so restricted that now it has to resort to violence in order to be able to feed itself because of how restricted that channel is. That's why love is expansion. See, I don't need to, I don't have violent taste buds when I have an expanded channel. But when it's so constricted, now I'll crave the violence because that's the only way I can get it through a restricted channel. Did that answer the question?
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. And it's a hard one. I think somebody in the chat was talking about, Grampong was talking about Jim Jones as a cult leader, and he said he was much more than that. And of course, you start digging, you realize, no, this was intelligence, government. There was a lot of power behind him beyond the cult leader. This was some social engineering. So
yes.
it gets pretty wicked. It gets pretty
MK
wicked.
Ultra.
Yeah, it's all part of that.
Yeah.
CIA.
Yeah, I mean, Charles Manson was probably a CIA honeypot. I mean,
yeah,
he was part, and he was, yeah.
Wow.
So, oh well, curiouser. Well, as we are getting to the end, any, do you mind answering a few more questions from
Sure.
the audience, Sarah? All right, awesome. Vince, let us have it.
Okay. Let's see. Here's a big long one. Info on peoples whose chakra have disappeared. That's okay. I'll just read it. Sarah, I found your work through Danica interview recently. At one point, you mentioned a sentence or two that you know people whose chakra have disappeared.
Oh, no,
do you have any more info on this? Say again?
They took it out. They took their chakras out.
Oh, they took their chakras.
Yeah,
out.
you guys think you're Gnostic?
No, but remember, Ola
How do you
Wolny
do
was
that?
talking about, you can get rid of your chakras.
Wait, say that again? Who?
Oh, we had a guest a few weeks ago, Ola Wolny. She's also, and she talked about getting rid of your chakra. She sees them as negative. There's ways you can get rid of them because they're tied into fate, and some people, were fighting against destiny and astral determination and all that. So,
oh, that's a unique perspective. I've never heard that one. The perspective of the motive and reason behind the reason why the people I know had taken theirs out was pretty Gnostic, even though they're not. It's like, this is all a false matrix, even the chakras. They're all synthetic. It's all synthetic. You're fed off of through the chakras. The chakras are feeding whatever. And
that's what Ola said. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, and sometimes I do wonder, because I went through a stage in my life where I was like, oh my God, like, do I take my chakras out? Like, it was super stressful.
Like
so stressful. I've never had a normal problem. I always had, like,
get ice cream after.
I decided that I was already autoimmune at that time, and so what I decided was that where I was coming from personally, not these other people, and they're adepts, by the way. They're not little newbies that are like, I'm going to take my chakras out. They know what they're doing. But when I questioned myself, what I found was that if I am so scared of this reality to the point where I have to take off my chakras because not even those are real, then that means that I'm also, if I follow that line of logic, because as nonlinear as I am, I've always been linear. And that's how I got to the nonlinear. So I've been like, then that means that I would have to believe that this is 100% utterly a realm I'm living in that is like children of the lesser God. Like literally there is no light here. There is no organic qualities here. And so that was just my own personal reason. What reason I felt like I would come from a place of woundedness. Other people might not be coming from that place when they do. But for me, if I took mine out at that time, I was thinking about it, and it would come from me not trusting reality at all, and not even thinking that you can use a synthetic overlay in order to be organic in this experience. But I do believe that. I believe that even though the chakras are synthetic or whatever we could call them, even though they're overlays being projected onto us in this experience, I believe still with that knowledge that they're organic for being in a not fully organic experience, because the world around us is organic and synthetic. And so we're in a matrix, but there's also at that same time that higher potential. And so I chose the route of integrating the chakras until at a higher level of dimension, they all consolidate anyways into the heart center. So I chose that evolutionary path. But the people who I know who chose to take them out because this is synthetic and they're being fed off of, that thought form did not come from the New Age. That's actually been a part of some forms of shamanism. It's a very old thought form. So I think it deserves respect. And I respect, and I don't say that lightly, okay? I don't come into this world respecting a lot of people, but the people who have taken them out, I actually respect. So yeah, hope that answered the question.
Wow, it's the first I've heard of it, and I'm no stranger to all these things. Learn something new every day. You want to go back to Brinta, who posted their questions before we even started. On your last posted video on the Starseeds, you mentioned at the end, stop being bad vibes, you're holding us up. Who and how are they being so? Does this make sense to you?
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense.
Okay.
So I did that as comic relief because I pretty much feel like anyone, you don't need to even subscribe to the Starseed paradigm. I feel like sometimes when I'm channeling, there's collective relief we could get through humor. And so to sum up without any technicality, saying just bad vibes, I felt like would be a whole community consensus relief. And so who I was thinking of in that instance, nothing in particular at that time.
I was hoping it would be like Carly Simon's You're So Vain, your version, Sarah. We have to guess. Is it Mick Jagger or is it Justin Bieber or who are you talking about?
Dude, that is so funny. Yeah, like I pretty much, if I had to signal anyone, it was a message to the collective who still cares that Kardashians exist, because honestly, I'm not cool with that stuff that happened with that fashion brand. And I find it very disgusting that we're in a consensus where, like, unless something is like constantly being thrown in our face by a celebrity, like we should not even be putting people like that in a role to be like, here, tell it, like, be our guide stone for morality. And so yeah, it goes out to all those cats.
Yeah, and certainly children, they want their life essence. But what do you think about women? Because you were talking about autoimmune, and I've been reading this book by Gabor Mate, the myth of normal. And the statistics are really startling. For example, one statistic is in the earliest 20th century, Sarah, autoimmune disease and all those, it was equal between men and women. Today, it's like 70% women and 20% men. And then you look at statistics and mental health with women, and I feel there is there's a war against women that's now turned into more psychic and soul. Do you feel that way? I think because women represent nature and women guard the portals to the other worlds. So of course, if you can control women or beat them down, you have the power, right? Or do you think I'm just sort of uber Gnostic? Uber Philip K. Dick paranoid.
No, I think you're onto something, but I do want to say that what I have learned from my own studies on autoimmunity, because I've healed, like I was multiple autoimmune at one point, healed it all. I have some anomalies left, but they're from some nervous system injury. But yeah, what I have learned is that sometimes it goes underreported for men because of stigma. Like for instance, the autoimmune category of Hashimoto's, the thyroid one, is overwhelmingly female. But then when you look closer at how it's diagnosed to even get those statistics, you'll start to find that how they're diagnosed, there's an issue there between either how the man is communicating their symptoms to their doctor, or how there's some sort of like shame also involved. So anyways, the results are a little skewed because of that versus women. I forget the exact details of it. And then you can amplify that to other ones. But yeah, but is there attack going on women? Yeah, absolutely. Women is so powerful that now there has to be its own age of the rise of the divine feminine, which if you ask me, because I'm, I have a hermetic heart, but I'm Gnostic to the bone.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Love it.
So because of that, I do think that the androgynon in me goes, well, the rise of the divine feminine is the rise of the divine masculine. So it's also the rise of the divine masculine. I'm glad I incarnated as a woman specifically for that reason, to build women up, to bring respect and dignity to the feminine energy. So I'm obviously not coming from a place where I'm like, no, the man is too, but the rise of the divine feminine is inextricably linked with the rise of the divine masculine, because from a higher perception, the woman is the man. And then in some traditions, it's the opposite. Gnostic tradition, it's the man is the man and he's the woman.
Yeah, the Adam Cadman, the androgyny, Hermes and all that. So yeah, that makes sense. Well, awesome. Well, Vince, unless you have another last question or comment, we shall.
I haven't asked anything because I'm so busy, getting the audience questions out. But Sarah, who are you? Who do you channel? I heard you you mentioned you're channeling. Who is it that you channel, or what is it?
So there's a certain point where when you walk closer to the sun, you are the sun, so you can't see that you're the sun. So if I were further away, I could tell you, I'm channeling the Arcturians. I'm channeling whatever. I've walked too close to the sun. I've merged. So now I just say my higher self, my oversoul. Because when it's coming in, I'm not saying with my mind, who are you? What group do you belong to? So I could go tell people. I just transmit. I'm just a messenger. I'm a messenger with really great eyebrows.
You're Hermes with great eyebrows.
So sometimes people go like, I want to know. And I get that. I don't think that that's a bad question. And I don't think a person should feel ashamed for that question. But my answer would be that when you have merged so much with your higher self, or when you have merged so much with, your oversoul, I just say oversoul because to me, we can all relate to, we're all a part of what does the oversoul mean? The oversoul means whatever it means to a person. The oversoul just to me means the collective soul that came in before the arena, right? Before we came in to the individual experience. And I don't use the term God because God has been used typically when I'm talking or teaching and stuff. People will go, I notice, to a lower frequency. So I use God sometimes, but I'm always using it in tandem with another term so that I could also like translate. I'll be like God or source or this or this or that. But if you read my poetry, I say God all the time. I say God every other line because in my poetry, that's what wants to come out. So it's nothing against that term. It's just that I feel that people's frequency, when I say that term, they're located in a lower frequency. And so for that, then I say oversoul because it's just a very general term of the collective consciousness before it came into this arena.
I get that. That happened to me with my guide. I had a spiritual guide when I was younger, and at one point, my guide told me, "I am you, and you are me," and that was the end. Then from then on, whatever came through was just what came through. So I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, and so like if I suppose I could, when I'm receiving information, go like, who are you from and stuff, but then that would block the flow. That would pull me in the mental mind. And in the mind, the mind needs all this logistics.
It's separate identities, separate individuals, right?
Yeah, I'm like a walking mania, like the feminine energy of chaos and stuff. And so I'm like, oh, don't funk my flow.
That's great.
Awesome.
All right.
Awesome. Well, we have your website, the alchemist.community. And then, of course, I'll have it in the show notes for everybody. There will be an audio version tomorrow and all the usual channels. This video will be on YouTube and Rockfin. So it will be everywhere. But for those on audio, any other places people can find you, or just go to the alchemist.community?
My YouTube channel, it's the username is @official_the_alchemist. That's where my passion and attention is at. But yeah, that's my website.
And you
Thank you
commit
for
to
having
like,
me.
oh, it's been great. And you commit to like one video a day, or do
One
you write
video
a
a
list,
week.
or you just, as the spirit moves you, do you?
Yeah, I do one video a week. And then if my schedule permits, I might be doing a second one a week. Yeah.
Okay. And then we get the little snackables on Instagram, and then
Oh yeah, and then I'll be doing shorts because they're
yeah,
monetizing shorts.
yeah, I am too. Yeah.
That was a bunch of shorts.
Alchemy and archons and everything. These days. Well, awesome. Yeah, for the audience, thank you very much. Tomorrow we will have another AB Live. We're going to be talking about cults, mystery religions, and ancient times. But it'll be a fun one too. And yeah, I really appreciate everybody being here. Vance, thanks for keeping us company and handling the audience and the questions like a Hermes yourself.
Oh, it was great. A lot, and it's been a lot of fun, Sarah. Appreciate being here and your great energy.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was wonderful, Sarah, and good luck with everything. And we look forward to the next time we can chat.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure is all ours. And for everybody, as I always say, write your own gospel and live your own myth. Good night, everybody.
Good night.